Marilyn Monroe, born Norma Jean Mortensen, spent childhood years in foster homes in Los Angeles. She married young, then entered modeling and studio contracts that shaped her screen image. Relationships were central, including marriages to Joe DiMaggio and Arthur Miller, and guidance from photographers and acting teachers. Monroe contributed to mid-century American cinema with musical comedies and character work that broadened her range. She challenged studio control by forming an independent production company and negotiating for role and script input. Public controversies involved contract suspensions, lateness on sets, and intense press focus on private life. In the final months, Monroe faced health strains and professional pressures while attempting a return to projects. She died in early August of 1962 in Los Angeles. Investigators described a drug-related incident and ruled the death as probable self-inflicted harm. Monroe was interred at Westwood Village Memorial Park Cemetery in Los Angeles. The crypt sits in a small cemetery behind commercial streets, visited steadily by admirers who leave flowers and notes. Joe DiMaggio handled funeral plans, and nearby burials of industry figures have formed a cluster of mid-century memorials. The modest scale of the niche contrasts with Monroe's vast public image. The site's continued visitation signals the endurance of her screen legacy, while the quiet setting reflects the intimate character of Westwood. James Dean spent childhood years in Fairmount, Indiana after early family loss, living with relatives who anchored his schooling and community ties. He later studied in California, then trained in New York, focusing on stage and live television before entering studio contracts. Dean's legacy centers on 3 feature films that shaped a mid-century image of youth. He applied method-influenced preparation with a restrained screen presence. Publicity amplified the archetype, while colleagues noted discipline and collaboration. Dean died in late September of 1955 after a highway collision near Cholame, California, en route to a racing event. Investigators documented the crash conditions and vehicle damage, and an inquest reviewed accounts before closing the case. He was buried at Park Cemetery in Fairmount, Indiana, near family plots and local landmarks. The grave became a steady site of pilgrimage, with notes and tokens left by visitors. Episodes of vandalism prompted replacements and preservation steps, and nearby institutions curated exhibits. The Midwestern burial context matches Dean's early life, while the cultural memory extends well beyond Indiana. The site's ongoing visitation reflects the lasting influence of a brief, defining film career. Judy Garland was born into a performing family and toured in vaudeville with her sisters before joining MGM in adolescence. She formed close bonds with colleagues, including directors, musicians, and studio mentors, and later married several times, raising children who entered entertainment. Garland's public contributions include landmark musical performances, recordings, and concert work that set standards for screen and stage. She navigated intense studio oversight, scheduling pressures, and image management while delivering enduring roles that anchored the genre. Contract disputes and court actions marked turning points that shifted her career toward concerts and international tours. Health challenges, financial strain, and professional interruptions defined later years. Garland died in late June of 1969 in London, with officials describing a drug-related incident and concluding the cause as self-inflicted harm. The news prompted tributes from across film and music communities, recognizing her influence on performance style and repertoire. Garland was first interred at Ferncliff Cemetery in Hartsdale, New York, in a mausoleum that became a steady sight for visitors. In early 2017, her remains were moved to Hollywood Forever Cemetery in Los Angeles to join a family memorial setting, aligning with the city most associated with her film career. The reinterment illustrates how families and institutions reframe legacies over time. Garland's memorial presence in Los Angeles places her close to studios and theaters that shaped her work, while the earlier New York resting place remains part of the historical record of public mourning and remembrance. Clark Gable grew up in the Midwest and began on small stages before studio contracts brought steady work. He married several times, formed close friendships with collaborators, and developed a professional partnership network that sustained long runs at MGM. Personal ties included a highly public marriage to Carole Lombard, which shaped both careers and public image. Gable's contributions defined the classic leading man in studio-era drama and adventure. He won major recognition for a screwball romance performance and sustained popularity through wartime and post-war productions. His service in the Army Air Forces during the Second World War, documented in training films and missions, added a public service dimension to his screen persona. Late career work continued with prominent directors and ensemble casts. After filming a demanding production in the desert with significant physical strain, Gable suffered a heart-related event in Los Angeles and died in late 1960. Obituaries emphasize durability, professionalism, and a consistent audience connection across decades. Gable was interred at Forest Lawn Memorial Park in Glendale in a crypt beside Carole Lombard and near family. Funeral arrangements reflected studio-era customs with colleagues, press, and veterans present. The mausoleum setting, orderly and formal, aligns with Forest Lawn's mid-century memorial design. The adjacent placement of Gable and Lombard reinforces a shared narrative in Hollywood history. The paired crypts offer a stable, quiet focal point for visitors, contrasting with the expansive scale of their public careers. Humphrey Bogart grew up in New York in a family connected to medicine and illustration, then moved from stage work to early sound films. He married several times, establishing his most enduring partnership with Lauren Bacall, whom he met during a wartime production. Their household in Los Angeles became a center for close friends and colleagues. Bogart's contributions include defining portrayals in crime and adventure, with key roles in a private detective story and a wartime romance that shaped studio-era identity. His years at Warner Brothers displayed a consistent collaboration with producers, directors, and writers who valued his economy of gesture and precise delivery. He co-founded a social circle later known as the Original Rat Pack, a group aligned by friendship rather than formal membership. Bogart faced illness in the mid-1950s, continuing work while receiving treatment. He died in early 1957 in Los Angeles from esophageal cancer, with funeral services drawing a cross-section of Hollywood peers and acknowledging his stage and screen roots. Obituaries emphasized a disciplined craft and a modern, unsentimental screen presence. He was interred at Forest Lawn Memorial Park in Glendale, marked by a modest inscription within an orderly lawn and mausoleum complex. Family and friends maintained a private tone around the site, which received steady but measured visitation. Bogart's restrained memorial reflects a career built on control and clarity, a legacy that persists in film courses, repertory screenings, and archival preservation. Bette Davis grew up in New England, studied acting in New York, and moved from Broadway to early film contracts. She married several times and maintained close professional ties with directors, writers, and cinematographers. Friendships within the Warner Brothers community and among New York theater colleagues shaped opportunities and collaboration. Davis's public contributions include a sustained record of complex lead roles that redefined possibilities for actresses in studio-era drama. She pressed for stronger scripts, resisted typecasting, and won major awards while accepting unglamorous parts that emphasized character over image. Her dispute with Warner Brothers led to a legal case in Britain that clarified the limits of suspension clauses and publicized contract restraints across the industry. Late career phases brought television work, memoirs, and speaking engagements that furthered public understanding of the studio system and its labor practices. Health setbacks, including serious illness and recovery, were followed by periodic returns to film and television, sustaining a multi-decade presence. She died in late 1989 in France after a period of declining health. Davis was interred at Forest Lawn Memorial Park in the Hollywood Hills, in a family plot, with inscriptions that emphasize professional identity and resilience. The hillside setting, with views across the San Fernando Valley, aligns with the cemetery's design of open lawns and structured terraces. The burial location and epitaph reflect a career centered on craft and persistence. The site's steady visitation by film students and historians parallels the continued reassessment of Davis's influence on screen acting and studio labor dynamics. Rita Hayworth, born Margarita Cancino, grew up in a family dance troupe led by her parents, performing in clubs and on stages in California and Mexico. She married several times, including a highly public marriage to Prince Ali Khan, and maintained close ties with choreographers, photographers, and studio colleagues who supported her transition from dancer to leading actress. Hayworth's public contributions include defining performances in musicals and dramas that helped shape Columbia Pictures' identity during the war years. Studio branding reframed her image through hair color and name change, positioning her as a marquee figure and pinup icon. She balanced glamour with disciplined dance training, working with directors who emphasized musical staging and camera movement. In later years, Hayworth experienced progressive cognitive decline that was later identified as Alzheimer's disease. Family members undertook guardianship and care, while public statements and advocacy by relatives increased awareness of the condition at a time of limited understanding. She died in the late 1980s in New York after a period of declining health. Hayworth was interred at Holy Cross Cemetery in Culver City, in a family setting that receives regular visitation. The grave inscription and nearby markers frame a quiet memorial context, contrasting with the scale of wartime publicity that once defined her career. Her memorial and the family's advocacy contributed to broader recognition of Alzheimer's disease in public discourse. The site at Holy Cross situates a prominent screen figure within a modest Catholic cemetery, linking a celebrated studio-era image to a measured and personal resting place. Jean Harlow was raised in the Midwest and Los Angeles, marrying young and entering films through bit parts before rapid ascent at MGM. Close relationships with her mother, studio mentors, and fellow performers shaped a tightly managed professional circle. A long partnership with William Powell provided stability during her peak years. Harlow's contributions defined a pre-code and early code screen presence, blending sharp comedic timing with an assertive modern image. She headlined comedies and dramas that capitalized on wit, speed, and directness, helping refine the studio's star system and publicity methods. Her persona influenced fashion, dialogue rhythms, and the marketing of romantic comedies. A sudden medical crisis interrupted production on an ensemble picture in the late 1930s. Studio physicians and outside specialists attempted treatment, and news coverage tracked her decline with unusual public attention. She died in early summer of 1937 in Los Angeles, a loss that prompted wide commentary on working conditions and medical privacy during the studio era. Harlow was entombed at Forest Lawn Memorial Park in Glendale within the Great Mausoleum. William Powell oversaw arrangements, including floral displays and a polished marble crypt that became a quiet site of remembrance. The mausoleum's controlled access fosters a restrained setting, aligning with family wishes. The memorial's formality contrasts with Harlow's lively on-screen persona, while signaling the permanence the studio sought for its most visible figures. Visitors encounter a measured architectural space that centers a brief but influential career in early sound-era comedy and drama. Carole Lombard grew up between Indiana and California, building early friendships in Los Angeles studios and forming close professional ties with writers and directors who valued her speed and precision. Her marriage to Clark Gable linked two major careers while maintaining independent professional paths. Lombard's contributions centered on screwball comedy, where quick dialogue, physical agility, and collaborative rehearsal shaped landmark performances. She negotiated for script quality and director choice, helping set norms for actresses seeking greater creative control within the studio system. Publicity emphasized her wit and athleticism, aligning a modern image with accessible humor. In January of 1942, Lombard completed a U.S. Treasury bond tour in the Midwest, then boarded a flight west. The aircraft crashed near Las Vegas, with federal investigators reviewing flight decisions, weather, and terrain. News of the accident produced national mourning and focused attention on wartime travel risks for public figures supporting bond drives. Lombard was interred at Forest Lawn Memorial Park in Glendale, within the Great Mausoleum. Her crypt sits close to the space later chosen for Clark Gable, creating an enduring association that visitors often experience as a joint memorial narrative. Studio colleagues, family, and military representatives took part in services that reflected national wartime context. The adjacent placement of Lombard and Gable has sustained public memory of two distinct careers connected by marriage and wartime loss. The mausoleum's formal architecture and regulated access frame a quiet space that contrasts with the energetic tempo of Lombard's screen work. Gary Cooper spent childhood years in Montana and Idaho within a ranching and school setting that shaped an understated manner. Family connections and early work as an extra and stunt rider led to supporting roles, then to leads. He married and maintained long professional friendships with directors, writers, and cinematographers who valued economy and authenticity. Cooper's contributions defined a screen presence associated with restraint and moral steadiness. Westerns and wartime dramas anchored his image, while European projects and domestic productions demonstrated range beyond frontier settings. He received top industry honors for performances that balanced quiet resolve with precise physicality, influencing later interpretations of the American hero. Health concerns emerged in the late 1950s, overlapping with continued public appearances and selective roles. Cooper died in the spring of 1961 in Los Angeles after a period of illness, with tributes noting a consistent body of work across 3 decades. Memorial statements emphasized professionalism, discipline, and a durable connection with audiences. Cooper was buried at Sacred Hearts of Jesus and Mary Cemetery in Southampton, New York. The grave lies within a modest coastal parish setting, far from Hollywood landmarks. Family decisions favored privacy and proximity to longtime friends on Long Island. The Southampton burial underscores a measured public image, a quiet rural plot in contrast to a national screen legacy. The site receives respectful, steady visitation, while film scholars and archives continue to document Cooper's influence on performance style and the visual language of studio-era westerns and dramas. Errol Flynn was born in Tasmania and raised between Australia and Britain, with schooling that preceded travel through the Pacific and Europe. Early stage work led to screen tests and a contract that brought him to Hollywood. He married several times and maintained a wide circle of colleagues, including writers and stunt professionals who supported demanding action productions. Flynn's public contributions centered on swashbucklers and adventure films that defined an agile, ironic leading man. Collaborations with directors and composers shaped rhythmic fight sequences and a signature lightness that influenced genre conventions. Legal controversies, including widely reported trials in the early 1940s, affected his image even as juries acquitted him and studios sustained his career. Health decline followed years of strenuous work, frequent travel, and financial volatility. In the autumn of 1959, while visiting Vancouver, Flynn experienced acute distress and died after medical examination at a private residence and hospital. An autopsy described multiple underlying conditions, a finding reported in press accounts that balanced notoriety with recognition of a significant body of work. Flynn was interred at Forest Lawn Memorial Park in Glendale, within an orderly lawn section near other studio-era figures. The headstone presents a concise inscription, and the plot receives consistent visitors drawn by the enduring appeal of his adventure films. The modest gravesite contrasts with the scale of Flynn's on-screen exploits. It anchors a legacy built on movement, timing, and charm, now preserved in restorations, archival screenings, and studies of action choreography in classical Hollywood. Spencer Tracy grew up in Milwaukee in a close Catholic family, later training at a military academy, then studying at Ripon College and in New York for the stage. He married Louise Treadwell, and together they raised 2 children, maintaining a family life that he kept separate from publicity. A long, private partnership with Katharine Hepburn shaped work and companionship while respecting Tracy's household commitments. Tracy's contributions include a sustained record of naturalistic screen acting across drama and comedy. His collaborations with top directors and writers emphasized understatement, timing, and ethical complexity. He earned major industry recognition over several decades, setting a benchmark for restrained performance that influenced later generations. Chronic health issues, including diabetes and heart strain, affected his workload in the 1950s and 1960s. He completed scenes for a final film with Hepburn in Los Angeles, then died in the summer of 1967 at home after a period of declining health. Tributes noted discipline, craftsmanship, and consistent collegial respect. Tracy was buried at Forest Lawn Memorial Park in Glendale, in a family plot marked by simple inscriptions and a quiet lawn setting. Services reflected family wishes, with colleagues attending in a measured, private manner consistent with his approach to publicity. The restrained memorial aligns with Tracy's screen ethos of clarity and control. The gravesite's modest presentation supports a legacy built on work rather than spectacle, sustained through film study, archival restoration, and continued audience engagement. Katharine Hepburn was raised in New England in a family that emphasized education and civic engagement. She attended Bryn Mawr College, then moved to the stage in New York before entering films. Long-standing professional and personal ties included a deep partnership with Spencer Tracy, while Hepburn maintained an independent household and close relationships with siblings and lifelong friends. Hepburn's contributions reshaped expectations for actresses through a blend of intelligence, athleticism, and candor. Early setbacks at RKO, including a period labeled box office poison, were followed by strategic stage returns and careful role selection that revived her film career. She balanced comedies and dramas, cultivated a distinctive voice and physicality, and later embraced television projects, establishing a wide-ranging record of acclaimed performances. In later years, Hepburn reduced screen work, living primarily in Connecticut and spending time on the family property at Fenwick. Health issues accompanied aging, but she remained a public figure sparingly, granting selective interviews and publishing memoirs that documented craft and working methods. She died in the early summer of 2003 at her Connecticut home. Hepburn was buried at Cedar Hill Cemetery in Hartford in the family plot. The site is modestly marked, consistent with a private approach to memorials. Visitors encounter a quiet setting of trees and pathways within a 19th-century cemetery landscape. The Hartford burial affirms Hepburn's New England identity and measured public presence. The understated memorial matches a career defined by self-direction, rigorous preparation, and a durable influence on screen performance and career management. Joan Crawford was born in Texas and raised across the Southwest and Midwest, later moving to Los Angeles as a dancer before screen tests led to studio contracts. She adopted a professional name early and cultivated ties with producers, publicists, and photographers who helped shape a precise public image. Marriages and adoptions formed a family that figured in later estate matters and public discussion. Crawford's contributions spanned melodrama, musical drama, and later suspense, with a disciplined approach to preparation and publicity. She transitioned from silent to sound cinema, then from MGM to Warner Brothers, adapting to changing styles and audience expectations. Awards and renewed visibility through television appearances and interviews maintained a long public presence. In later years, Crawford managed health concerns and reduced public outings, focusing on correspondence and professional associations. She died in New York City in the late 1970s after a period of declining health. Obituaries reflected on a career that exemplified studio-era self-presentation and sustained work across shifting genres. Crawford was entombed at Ferncliff Cemetery in Hartsdale, New York, within a mausoleum visited by film historians and admirers. The crypt inscription is concise, and nearby niches include family members, creating a focused memorial setting. Estate provisions and subsequent disputes drew attention to the administration of her legacy. The Ferncliff site, orderly and enclosed, aligns with Crawford's emphasis on control and presentation. The measured memorial contrasts with the intensity of her on-screen roles while situating a major studio figure within a quiet suburban cemetery near New York production and media centers. William Powell was born in Pittsburgh and raised partly in Kansas City and New York, studying drama before entering stock companies and Broadway. He married several times, maintained long friendships with actors and writers, and formed a durable screen partnership with Myrna Loy that anchored a trusted professional circle. Powell's public contributions include refined comic and dramatic performances that emphasize diction, timing, and understated wit. The Thin Man series defined a model of marital banter and urbane detection that influenced studio comedy and mystery hybrids. Beyond that franchise, he balanced sophisticated leads with character-driven roles, sustaining credibility across changing tastes. Personal trials, including the loss of his partner Jean Harlow and periods of illness, shaped a quieter profile in later years. Powell scaled back output while choosing select projects with established directors and ensembles. He retired from films with a reputation for precision and collegial professionalism that colleagues and critics recognized. Powell was interred at Desert Memorial Park in Cathedral City, California. The grave lies within an orderly desert lawn setting that also includes industry peers, creating a discrete cluster of studio-era memorials. Inscriptions are restrained, matching the understated public persona. The Cathedral City burial situates an urbane screen figure in a calm, open landscape associated with Hollywood's retreat spaces. The site's measured tone fits a career defined by elegance, control, and enduring collaboration, with ongoing interest sustained through restorations, retrospectives, and studies of sophisticated comedy in the studio period. Mary Pickford was born in Toronto and raised in a theatrical family that toured North America, establishing ties with stage managers, producers, and fellow child performers. She married 3 times, most prominently to Douglas Fairbanks, forming a professional alliance that shaped both careers and social circles. Their estate, Pickfair, became a meeting place for colleagues and visiting artists. Pickford's contributions defined early screen stardom and business leadership. She negotiated unprecedented contracts, co-founded United Artists with Fairbanks, Charlie Chaplin, and D.W. Griffith, and advocated for creative control and fairer terms for talent. On screen, she embodied youthful characters with precise gesture and timing, helping to codify close-up acting in the silent era. In later years, Pickford reduced acting, focusing on production, philanthropy, and preservation. She supported industry charities and contributed to film archival efforts. Health concerns and reclusion increased in the 1940s and 1950s, with selective public appearances that underscored her historical role. She died in Los Angeles in the late 1970s after a period of illness. Pickford was entombed at Forest Lawn Memorial Park in Glendale, within a chapel mausoleum. The setting emphasizes quiet reflection, with inscriptions that record her professional identity and family connections. Visitors encounter a measured interior space consistent with Forest Lawn ceremonial design. The Glendale entombment places a foundational film executive and performer within a formal memorial environment. It reflects a career that moved from national popularity to institutional influence, linking personal legacy, industry organization, and the preservation of early cinema. Douglas Fairbanks was born in Denver and trained for the stage before entering silent films, where athletic skill and a collaborative temperament shaped strong professional networks. Marriage to Mary Pickford created a prominent partnership that extended to business, social events, and international goodwill tours, centering activity at the Pickfair estate. Fairbanks's public contributions included adventurous costume epics and comedies that showcased physical agility, choreographed stunts, and upbeat characterizations. He co-founded United Artists with Mary Pickford, Charlie Chaplin, and D.W. Griffith, advancing a model of artist-controlled distribution that influenced studio-era negotiations. His films helped define large-scale production values and international marketing of American cinema. Health concerns and reduced stamina curtailed output in the late 1920s and early 1930s. After a period of travel and intermittent projects, Fairbanks died in late 1939 in Santa Monica. Tributes emphasized innovation, athleticism, and a central role in establishing the commercial structure of the film industry. Fairbanks was entombed at Hollywood Forever Cemetery in Los Angeles. His sarcophagus stands beside a reflecting pool in a landscaped court, a memorial design that echoes themes of classicism and public ceremony. The site became a focal point for silent-era remembrance and for visitors tracing the origins of Hollywood stardom. The prominent memorial underscores Fairbanks's dual legacy as performer and industry organizer. Its open, formal setting contrasts with the indoor mausoleums common to the period, reinforcing his status as a founding figure of screen spectacle and modern film distribution. Rudolph Valentino was born in Italy and emigrated to the United States as a young man, forming early connections within New York and Los Angeles dance halls and film sets. He married twice during his rise, building professional ties with directors, writers, and publicists who shaped his image as a romantic lead. Valentino's contributions define the silent era's international matinee idol, blending expressive movement with stylized design and music to create a specific screen atmosphere. Studio branding amplified his appeal through costume epics and modern dramas, while fan clubs, magazine features, and publicity tours established a transatlantic following. His performances influenced fashion, dance trends, and the marketing language of desire in early cinema. In August of 1926, Valentino suffered an acute health crisis in New York following complications from abdominal surgery. Physicians reported peritonitis and related conditions, and despite intensive treatment, he died in late August. Public mourning included large crowds at the funeral home and church services, with extensive press coverage documenting the processions and security responses. Valentino was entombed at Hollywood Forever Cemetery in Los Angeles, within the Cathedral Mausoleum. The crypt became the center of annual remembrances, with admirers gathering for readings, music, and historical talks that trace the origins of his stardom. Memorial displays and nearby niches reinforce a sustained site of silent-era memory. The enduring rituals around Valentino's crypt show how early fan culture adapted into heritage practice. The mausoleum's formal architecture and curated programming preserve a career that linked immigrant ambition, studio promotion, and the emerging global audience for American film. Bela Lugosi trained in Hungarian theater before serving in the First World War and emigrating after political upheaval. He worked in European troops, then settled in the United States, building stage credentials in New York. Colleagues in theater and film supported his transition to screen roles, and friendships with actors and technicians sustained a professional network through varying fortunes. Lugosi's public contribution rests on a definitive portrayal of a Gothic count, first on stage, then in an early sound film that shaped horror cinema's visual and vocal codes. Typecasting followed, with studios using his distinctive presence in thrillers and serials. Collaborations with independent producers and later appearances with Ed Wood extended his career, while fan magazines maintained a loyal audience. Later years brought financial strain and health challenges, including treatment for dependency. Lugosi pursued stage tours and low-budget features, maintaining visibility despite limited resources. He died in mid-1956 in Los Angeles after a period of declining health, with obituaries acknowledging a central role in establishing American screen horror. Lugosi was buried at Holy Cross Cemetery in Culver City. Family honored his association with the famous role in decisions about attire, a detail often noted by visitors and historians. The grave rests within a Catholic cemetery that includes numerous entertainment figures, creating a quiet context amid industry landmarks. The measured memorial contrasts with the elaborate imagery of his films. It anchors a legacy defined by voice, posture, and silhouette, preserved through restorations, repertory screenings, and scholarship on early horror and immigrant influence in Hollywood. Lon Chaney, born in Colorado Springs to deaf parents, learned expressive communication at home and carried that skill to the stage. He married young, worked in touring companies, and moved to Los Angeles, where friendships with makeup artists, cameramen, and directors, especially Todd Browning, formed a durable professional circle. Chaney's public contributions centered on transformative performances in silent horror and melodrama. He designed and applied his own makeup, experimented with prosthetics, and used controlled physicality to create distinct characters. Roles in crime tales, pathos-driven dramas, and macabre stories established techniques that influenced later special effects and character acting. Health problems emerged at the turn of the 1930s, coinciding with the industry's transition to sound. After throat complications and illness, Chaney died in late 1930 in Los Angeles. Tributes emphasized technical ingenuity, discipline, and the integration of makeup design with performance style. Chaney was interred at Forest Lawn Memorial Park in Glendale in the family plot. The grave is unmarked, a deliberate choice by relatives, but cemetery records and guides identify the location. Visitors rely on maps and secondary markers to pay respects, reflecting a preference for privacy and restraint. The absence of a headstone contrasts with Chaney's highly visible screen transformations. The quiet, nearly anonymous resting place underlines a career defined by craft and control, with legacy sustained through film preservation, study of makeup innovation, and the continuing influence on character-driven cinema.